He stopped breathing the moment he realized he wasn't alone. Just a few meters ahead, perfectly still, a snow leopard was watching him. Silent, focused, and far closer than it should have been. At that altitude, in freezing silence, there was no one to help him. No weapon, no escape route. Only one decision stood between him and what could become his final moment on that mountain. What he chose to do next went against every instinct of survival. And even today, mountaineers argue about whether that single decision saved his life, or if it was pure luck that he survived the encounter at all. The mountain had always been quiet, but that morning the silence felt heavier than usual. The kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes every breath sound louder than it should. The mountaineer had been climbing for hours, following a narrow route etched into the frozen slope, his body moving on instinct more than thought. At this altitude, thinking too much was dangerous. Every step had to be measured. Every movement had to be deliberate. He had come here alone, not because it was safer, but because solitude was part of the discipline. No distractions, no conversations, just the mountain, the cold, and the steady rhythm of climbing. The weather had been stable when he started, clear skies stretching endlessly above the jagged white peaks. But the higher he climbed, the more the environment changed. Wind began to cut across the ridge in sudden bursts, carrying fine snow that stung his face like needles. He stopped briefly to adjust his gloves, planting his ice axe firmly into the ground. That was when the feeling hit him, a sensation difficult to explain but impossible to ignore. The unmistakable awareness of being watched. Not imagined, not instinct alone, something deeper, something ancient. At first he didn't turn around. Climbers are trained not to react impulsively. Panic wastes energy, and energy at this altitude is life itself. He slowly lifted his head and scanned the ridge ahead. Nothing, just rock, snow, and the endless slope disappearing into mist. The silence returned, but it no longer felt empty. Then he saw it. Blending almost perfectly into the pale stone and snow, the shape became clearer as his eyes adjusted. A powerful body crouched low against the ground. Thick fur patterned in muted grays and whites, and eyes, unblinking, locked onto him with a calm intensity that made his chest tighten. A snow leopard. They were rare, elusive, ghosts of the mountains. Many climbers spent their entire lives hoping to glimpse one from a distance. This was not that kind of encounter. The animal was close, too close. Close enough that he could see the slow rise and fall of its chest as it breathed. Time seemed to stretch. The mountaineer felt his heartbeat pounding against his ribs, each thud echoing in his ears. His first instinct screamed at him to move, to create distance, to do anything other than stand frozen in place. But he didn't. He remembered what he had read, what few reports existed of encounters like this. Running could trigger a chase. Sudden movements could be interpreted as weakness. The snow leopard did not growl. It did not bare its teeth. It simply watched. Its tail lay partially hidden behind a rock, twitching once, slowly. A sign of calculation, not aggression. At least not yet. The mountaineer carefully shifted his weight, testing the ground beneath his boots. Loose gravel crunched softly under the snow. The sound felt impossibly loud. The leopard's ears flicked forward instantly. The distance between them suddenly felt much shorter. This was no longer about reaching the summit, no longer about endurance or skill. This was a moment stripped down to something raw and primal. Two living beings sharing the same narrow stretch of mountain, both aware that one wrong decision could change everything. The wind picked up again, sweeping across the ridge and briefly breaking eye contact as snow filled the air. In that fleeting moment, the mountaineer knew he had seconds, not minutes, to decide what to do next. And whatever choice he made would carry consequences he could not fully predict. He tightened his grip on the ice axe, not as a weapon but as an anchor, a reminder to stay grounded, to stay alive. The snow leopard shifted its position slightly, muscles tensing beneath its thick coat. The silence that followed felt different, thicker, as if the mountain itself was holding its breath. The mountaineer did not move. He forced his body to remain still even as cold crept deeper into his fingers and the muscles in his legs began to tremble from tension rather than fatigue. At this altitude, standing motionless was almost as dangerous as making the wrong move, but he understood one thing clearly now. This moment was not about speed, it was about control. The snow leopard shifted again, stepping forward just enough for its full form to emerge from the broken rocks. It was larger than he had imagined. Powerful shoulders rolled beneath its fur with effortless grace, every movement precise and economical. This was not an animal acting on impulse. This was a predator calculating distance, terrain, and risk. The mountaineer's mind raced, but he forced his breathing to slow. Short, controlled inhales, long exhales. Panic would betray him faster than any mistake. He lowered his gaze slightly, careful not to break awareness but avoiding a direct, aggressive stare. Predators recognized challenge. He did not want to be seen as one. The wind died down, leaving behind an unnatural stillness. In that quiet, he became painfully aware of every sound his body made. The faint scrape of fabric against his jacket, the subtle crunch of snow shifting beneath his boots. Even his breath felt too loud. The snow leopard's ears twitched with every noise, tracking him with unnerving precision. He thought about turning back, slowly retreating along the narrow path he had climbed. But he knew what lay behind him. A steep descent, loose ice, and limited footing. Turning his back even gradually could invite pursuit. Snow leopards were ambush hunters. Silent, fast, built for terrain exactly like this. His hand tightened around the ice axe again, not out of aggression but reassurance. He reminded himself that the animal was not evil, not malicious. It was acting according to instinct the same way he was trying to survive according to training. Two lives intersecting in a place neither truly owned. The leopard paused, then lowered its body closer to the ground. Its tail moved again, slower this time. A sign of focus. The mountaineer's throat went dry. This was the posture of preparation. Not an immediate attack, but consideration. As if the animal was weighing whether the risk was worth the reward. He adjusted his stance by a fraction, spreading his weight evenly. The movement was deliberate, slow, almost ceremonial. He wanted to appear larger without appearing threatening. Years of climbing had taught him patience, but nothing had prepared him for negotiating with a wild predator using nothing but posture and presence. Memories flashed through his mind uninvited. Training sessions, articles he had skimmed years ago about rare encounters, warnings about sudden movements, advice that sounded clear and logical when read in safety but felt fragile and uncertain now. Standing face to face with a creature designed by nature to dominate this environment. The snow leopard lifted its head slightly, nostrils flaring as it tested the air. The mountaineer realized then that the animal was not starving. Its movements were calm, measured. This was not desperation. That knowledge brought no comfort. A well-fed predator could still attack if it perceived a threat. Seconds stretched into what felt like minutes. His legs burned. His fingers began to numb. He knew he could not stand like this forever. Something would have to change. Either the animal would decide to leave or he would have to make a decision that went against instinct. The mountain offered no guidance, no warning, no mercy. Far below, hidden beneath layers of rock and snow, the valley lay silent and unaware of what was unfolding above it. No witnesses, no rescue, just a man, a snow leopard, and a single choice that was drawing closer with every passing second. The leopard took one slow step forward, and in that moment the mountaineer understood that waiting was no longer an option. The step was deliberate, almost cautious, but it was enough to shatter any illusion of balance between them. The snow leopard had crossed an invisible line, closing the distance just enough to force a response. The mountaineer felt a surge of adrenaline flood his body, sharp and overwhelming, threatening to undo the calm he had fought so hard to maintain. This was the moment every instinct screamed at him to act, but act how? Running was impossible. The terrain behind him dropped away sharply, a narrow ribbon of ice and loose stone that demanded full attention even in perfect conditions. Turning his back would not only slow him down, it would signal vulnerability. And here, vulnerability could be fatal. Snow leopards were built for sudden acceleration, for explosive bursts of power over short distances. He knew he would never outrun it. Fighting was a fantasy. His ice axe was designed for climbing, not combat. Even if he managed to strike, the odds were against him. One miscalculation, one slip, and the mountain would claim him regardless of the animal's choice. So he did the one thing that felt most unnatural. He stood his ground. Slowly, deliberately, he straightened his posture. He planted his boots more firmly into the snow, widening his stance to appear larger, more stable. He raised his arms slightly, not aggressively, but enough to break the outline of his body against the rock and snow. His movements were controlled, almost ritualistic, as if he were reminding himself that fear did not have to dictate his actions. The snow leopard froze again. For the first time since they had locked eyes, there was a flicker of hesitation in the animal's posture. Its ears rotated backward, then forward again, processing this unexpected response. This human was not fleeing, not collapsing, not behaving like prey. The mountaineer locked his gaze just below the leopard's eyes, maintaining awareness without direct challenge. His breathing was shallow but steady. Every second felt like a fragile negotiation conducted without words, without guarantees. The wind returned, sweeping across the ridge and carrying the mountaineer's scent away from the leopard. Snow spiraled briefly between them, blurring the world into white motion. In that fleeting veil, the balance shifted again. The leopard's muscles loosened, just slightly. Its tail lowered, brushing the snow with a soft, controlled movement. Then something unexpected happened. The snow leopard turned its head. Not fully away, but enough to break the intensity of the stare. It scanned the slope to the side, ears alert, as if reminded of something beyond this single encounter. Hunger, territory, instinct, all weighed against risk. The mountaineer remained motionless, resisting the urge to react, knowing that any sudden movement could undo everything. Another long moment passed. The leopard took a step backward. The mountaineer felt a wave of disbelief wash over him, quickly followed by the dangerous temptation to relax. He didn't. He stayed exactly as he was, eyes steady, body firm, letting the animal make the choice without pressure. Respect, he realized, went both ways in the wild. The mountain did not reward dominance, it rewarded restraint. With one final glance, not fearful, not submissive, but assessing, the snow leopard turned away. Its body flowed effortlessly across the rocks, silent and precise, blending back into the landscape that had concealed it so perfectly before. Within seconds it was gone, swallowed by stone and snow as if it had never been there at all. The silence that followed was different again, not tense, not heavy, just vast. The mountaineer finally allowed himself to breathe deeply. His legs shook as the delayed shock set in, muscles releasing tension they had held far too long. He lowered his arms slowly, careful even now not to make sudden movements, as if the leopard might still be watching from somewhere unseen. He did not chase the summit that day. Instead, he made the careful decision to turn back, retracing his steps with a renewed awareness of how fragile control truly was. Every movement felt different now. The mountain was no longer just a challenge to conquer, but a living system where survival depended as much on humility as strength. Hours later, safe at lower altitude, he would struggle to fully explain what had happened. Words felt insufficient. People would ask what saved him. Skill, luck, courage. He would never settle on a single answer. But deep down, he knew the truth. One decision had changed everything. Not the decision to climb, not the decision to stand still, but the decision to respect the moment. To recognize that survival sometimes comes not from overpowering fear, but from meeting it without surrender. And somewhere high above, on a silent ridge of snow and stone, the ghost of the mountain continued its quiet watch, unchanged, indifferent, and eternal. And then the mountain fell silent once more.